Welcome back, Inebri-ites. This is Andy, as always. Joining me today is Kaelen Ohm from Amara. Welcome to the show. I actually didn't really do much lead-in, which is weird. I usually kind of ramble on. But I was just really intrigued because we were just talking ahead of time. You were had to do something quick on your computer because you're editing your music video. I love how everyone is kind of doing a little bit of everything now. It's like,
Mm.
do you was editing videos something that you had always wanted to do, or is this just a byproduct of the time we live in where everyone has to wear like 1,000 hats to do anything?
Actually, editing was a precursor to music for me.
Oh,
Not
really?
that it didn't bring me into music, but I went to film school right out of high school, and right out of film school, I was hired to edit ski films. I grew up skiing and ski racing, and yeah, I was hired to edit these heli ski films for a company in Calgary, Alberta. So I had just finished working as a PA on X-Men 3 in Vancouver right out of film school and packed up my 92 Pathfinder, which totally broke down and almost caught on fire on the way to my hometown. And then I started editing these videos, and it wasn't until quite a few years later that I started playing music,
So you
for
didn't play music at
4 or
all?
5 years. No, I had sort of grown up playing. I took piano lessons a little bit. I kind of once in a while would strum the acoustic guitar in the house, but yeah, I didn't pick up music until I was about 24. And my partner at the time had a bunch of great Fender guitars and amazing amps, and was a total audiophile and just introduced me to all these indie bands, Warpaint and Kurt Vile and Dum Dum Girls and Washed Out and Wild Nothing and all these bands that I fell in love with. And yeah, I just started kind of learning some riffs from those albums on his guitars. And then because Calgary's music scene at the time was really flourishing, it was really easy to just start joining bands. And so I just kind of did that. But I grew up with a lot of music around. I went to folk festivals as a kid, and my dad was always in like a garage band, and there was vinyl and radio playing in our house in all waking hours, pretty much. So it felt really natural to me to start playing.
Was it the bands that you were listening to that kind of galvanized your interest in it, or like what? Like 24 seems so, it's not late at all, but like it seems late to kind of,
It's late.
I mean, it
I mean,
is kind of.
there's all these indie stars now. I
Usually you talk to
guess
people and they're
Phoebe
like, "Oh, I
Bridgers
started
and
playing when I was
Clairo.
3."
No, total, or yeah,
Yeah.
or they were like, this new generation, I would say, or like half a generation below me. They were in their bedrooms, like making records when they were 12, computer children.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, I'd always wanted to, I think I always knew I wanted to play, like Rockstar Dreams or something. But actually, I've told this story before, but it was the band Warpaint. They put out a video for their song Elephants on the Exquisite Corpse EP. And I saw this video and I was like, oh my God, who are these women? Just kind of blew my mind. And I learned the riff to Elephants on the Fender Jazzmaster that was in our living room. And I was able to learn it by ear. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Like I can just kind of use my intuition for this now. And I've never been a technically driven person. I've always been an ideas driven person. And so music kind of just became an outlet for ideas. And I was just picking up instruments to execute those ideas and never really thought to take serious lessons or start learning scales or anything like that, which now in my ripe old age, just kidding. I'm thinking,
Please, please.
I should start taking guitar lessons properly or something like that. But yeah, it just has worked for me to kind of just go by ear. That's kind of how I learn.
It's really interesting that you refer to yourself as an idea person and not a technical person. Like I never really thought about those two divisions, but like I can totally relate to that. I'm not a writer, but I have a story idea, and I'm not this, but I have this idea. Like I think that's why like one of my favorite things to do is collaborate with people because I feel like they bring the things that I'm lacking. Do you find that same kind of like do you rather work alone or do you in a collaborative thing?
With music, it's really interesting. The last two records, I have really come into clarity that I at least need a body in the room to write. I write all my songs on my own, but
Like a live body or not like a mass murder,
yeah,
right?
totally. Letting you into some dark secrets already. No, it just I don't bank songs. I don't write songs in advance and then go, okay, I have 20 songs, let's go make a record. Usually if I have a break from my film work and it just feels like it's time, if I've lived enough life that there's something in me that needs to get out, I'll go into the studio and for whatever reason, songs can just flow. So I'll just show up in the morning, write something on a piano or a guitar, and usually just finish the outline to a song in a few hours and then get it going to start recording and producing. And on this record, Child of Venus, I actually spent a lot more time really going deeper and just sort of what's the word I'm looking for? I was just really looking at what I was doing and asking questions and going back on tracks and deciding to change an approach. And I hadn't really done that before. It was kind of like, okay, here's the first idea, trust it, it's done, move on. And time kept kind of unfolding for me where I just had time to really look at everything. And so it was a shift in my process in that way, but still it was very much just writing songs in that time period. And it just helped to have an engineer in the room. You know, I think it's like an accountability thing, maybe. And the same thing with film. I mean, a film set is such an incredibly collaborative space. And I just find when I'm around other creatives, I just have an open channel to that. But when I'm alone and I'm like, okay, I'm going to write a script now, or I'm going to write a record now, it's like pretty much crickets for me.
Did you have I feel like, I spent a year talking with people who were, closing their house and whatnot. And it was so interesting. There was two types of people there. The people that were like, oh, quarantine's great because I can get so much more done. And then there are people like myself. And I think that's kind of, and I didn't think of it at the time, but I think it's that part of it where I wasn't around other people. Like I wasn't kind of in that creative energy. Did you struggle through that in that same way?
Well, uh, I did a record. I made a record in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
In the summer of 2019, it was the EP Heart Speak that was all done in 9 days. It was such a quick thing. I was
Nine
going to keep
days.
going. Yeah, it was like written,
Wow.
recorded, produced in 9 days. It was crazy just how fast everything was moving. But I got a call that I had booked this Netflix series, which was kind of my first big like American acting
Was
gig,
that
and I just had
hit
to
and run?
leave. It was hit and run,
Yeah.
yeah. So I had to move to New York like on a whim, and um, I had intended to maybe go back and finish a full record, but all of a sudden we just had these six songs, and it was like I think this is complete, and it was such an emotional release for me, and I didn't want to revisit that time afterwards. So um, that was in the bag when COVID kind of really came into effect, and when um, I was in Israel shooting Hit and Run when everything got shut down and flew back to Toronto and then managed to make it over the border to drive to LA before they fully locked down everything. And so I had this record that I needed to put out, and film for me is a little different. Like when I have songs ready, I can absolutely initiate the music video process. So I kind of spent the summer doing that. I made 3 or 4 videos, 4 videos, I think, for that EP. And it was all just with friends in California. And it was a super creative, really potent time for that and so much fun. Um, and I guess in 2021, when I went to make Child of Venus, I had someone there
Yeah.
in the spare bedroom studio. So um, it was actually a really fruitful time, surprisingly. I also spent a lot of time like drinking tea and hiking in Topanga Canyon where I was living, um, and doing the COVID thing, absolutely. But honestly, my life when I'm not working is really similar to lockdown anyway. So it
Yeah.
wasn't a big change for me, to be honest.
So you were talking about like making videos for your last album and Child of Venus. Being that you're from a film background, like when you're writing in the studio, do you envision kind of the music video at the same time, or that kind of?
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes it's even visuals that will inspire a song for me or a melody or a synth tone or something like that. So Child of Venus is a record that's coming out this July, and the song New Love's Mortal Coil, which I just released a video for, the first single off the record. I wrote that song walking down the street, and the video was just fully playing in my head. And I was like, I need these like cheeky people in suits, and we're all going to be moving together. And yeah, it was something that emerged as sort of one idea. So it definitely happens that way.
That's the one where you're all wearing like individual colored suits. Is that the yeah?
Yeah,
That one, like I don't know if it was supposed to, but it made me think of OK Go.
I don't know. Okay, go. So
Oh,
bad.
so like they kind of
That kind of rings a bell, actually.
they make their songs are okay. I mean, like they're not my normal cup of tea, but they all kind of have like God, I don't want to make this comparison, but it's they all have like their own color, kind of. Like each
Okay.
guy almost like in every video has like a distinct color to them. Whether they're
Yeah.
wearing like race suits, they're all kind of wearing the same. Like there's the red guy, and in the next video he'll be wearing something that's also red. But they make really
Okay.
elaborate, like crazy complicated videos that are mostly
I
done
need
in
to
one
look.
shot. Yeah,
Oh, cool. I like that idea. I'm just
yeah.
about to shoot a one shot video next week, actually. It's really it's funny that you point out the individual covered colored suits because a mutual friend of the DP, Christian Sorensen Hansen, and I of that video said it reminded him of some like Teletubbies, but like
I was gonna say the
more
Wiggles, and I just
dystopian.
didn't want to
I was like,
like,
that's so weird.
yeah.
Well, it's not supposed to be. I mean, the thing is that that song is there's layers to it because the expression of it, the sonic quality of it, there's a cheekiness to it, and I wanted it to have that. But underneath it, there's some serious content there. And so the video really was meant to be kind of a hybrid of, I mean, cool if we can get there, but it was supposed to be light and cheeky. And I didn't intend to to have like a play on any sort of children's network programs,
Yeah.
um, but yeah,
Well, I'm glad I'm not the
I
only
guess
one that
that's
saw
what it
that.
caused.
That's do you
It
do
was it
you
was such a departure, that
yeah.
video, but it was because it wasn't really like, oh, here's a part of me. I guess it's all a part of me, but it was really based on characters and a concept, which was a bit of a departure from the rest of the videos that I've done for this music project in particular.
Was there a like what child program did you watch as a kid? I'm wondering if there's like some sort of subconscious like
Oh, this is interesting. We can go
yeah.
deeper into that. I
Tell me
I
about your mother.
didn't. She's downstairs. I'm hanging out with her for a few weeks in my hometown right now. Um, well, actually, I didn't get to watch a lot of television as a kid. My parents were very anti-television. I grew up in the mountains, so I was outside most of the time. But I think Sharon, Lois, and Bram was like the one.
Why does that sound
This is
familiar?
probably a very Canadian thing. I think they were Canadian.
Okay. They're not the ones
Um,
with the song that never ends. That's not them, is that?
I don't know. I'd have to
Okay.
look it up.
Don't
I
don't
know that
don't
song.
look
I'm
up.
not
I was
gonna
gonna say
start.
don't
No,
ever
no,
look
not the song. No, I know. No,
yeah.
no, I know that song. And also Fred Penner. Um, More musically was one of my like childhood music um favorites, which just a quick plug, one of my acting voice teachers, my closest, dearest mentor, married Fred Penner. And I got to meet Fred Penner. Fred Penner came over to my house for tea one day. And the like I mean, I literally went to his concerts when I was like 4 or 5 years old, listened to his cassette tape like on repeat in my bedroom. So that was a cool moment in my adult life to meet the man
That's
and have a
cool.
personal connection. Yeah, I guess it would be like for some people if like the voice of Barney like called your house to talk to your parent or something, you know.
Yeah, cool. So it sounds like, obviously had a very musical childhood. Was there that same influence of theater? Like, how did you get into the film industry?
The film one's an interesting beast for me because I mentioned I grew up in a small mountain town. I have no family members in the film industry. I the first house I was in didn't even have power or running water or electricity. It was like a cabin on a
You
lake,
were way up in the mountains, I
way
take
up
it.
there, out
Yeah.
there. Yeah. And I guess my parents took me to a drive-in movie when I was like two, and my we had this old um Ford Econoline van, like very old hippie van, and my parents had bolted my car seat in the middle, like on the motor cover, in between the two front bucket seats, facing the windshield, which I don't
Okay.
think you're supposed to do for babies.
Super, super safe.
but I, but I got to see the world, so that's cool. But I guess I just watched this film in total awe, the whole like just wide-eyed, like did not take my eyes off the screen, and then I don't know, told some family members when I was 2, 3 years old that I wanted to be famous when I grew up, and obviously I had no idea what that meant. And my path is not absolutely not towards fame, but there was some draw to me with films, and um, yeah, I wanted to be an actor. I think growing up, I kind of took drama in school, but there really wasn't a lot of option here. I grew up dancing and did a lot of like musical theater and competitive dance with our small studio, but I ended up going to film school kind of as a backup for my acting
Hmm.
dreams. I think I grew up dancing as well. And like I mentioned, and I was in a ski accident when I was 15 and broke my back pretty bad. So I think when I thought about being an actor, I was like, well, let's maybe find a backup plan that's in the same field, but you don't have to rely on your body just in case you have a bad ski day again, you know?
I just that's such an interesting because like I hear that a lot where like creative people be like, oh, my parents told me to have a backup plan, and just like I'm gonna be a musician. You should have a backup plan. Okay, sound engineer. Be like, that's not what I meant, like usually they want like
Yeah,
accountant
totally.
or that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was the one who put the backup plan on myself. I'm lucky in that my parents never questioned my path as an artist. I think they were like, whatever you want to do, you want to do, it's fine. Um, so yeah, I just kind of took that route, and it took me a long time. I didn't actually start pursuing acting until later in my 20s, even years after music. And I think I was finally realizing, okay, you're not getting any younger. This is already a bit of a lottery type career. Like even if you work super hard and even if you have amazing talent, it doesn't mean you're going to work, which is kind of a really strange part of our industry. But yeah, I started and I've been really lucky so far. So
That is one of the things that I see like time and time again is there's so many amazing creative people. I see it a lot with like visual artists. They can be the best at painting or whatever it is they do, but if it's a certain amount of commitment and sacrifice and hard work and luck, probably more than anything else, that just you need all those stars to align to make it happen.
hmm yeah, I sort of have a belief though in the arts, especially performing arts like music and acting, that if you work really, really hard and you stay with it, and obviously you have to have some kind of natural ability, but I think that if you are willing to put 10 years in, there's a good chance you're going to at least make a work life for yourself out of it. See that with a lot of bands, you know. I
Yeah.
remember when Future Islands came out and it was on like with singles and it was like, oh my God, where'd this band come from? They're blowing up out of nowhere, and then you look back and they've put out multiple records. They've been on the
Yeah,
road
yeah.
for like 6 years, you
The
know, and I think
overnight
that happens a
success.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's
Yeah.
only overnight because no one knew about it.
Yeah.
But I think that there is work to be done, and you can carve out a way to make some kind of living. I mean, obviously, the pandemic shone a light on how essential, quote, people think music is, which I thought was just absolutely insane. And I felt so bad for my friends and colleagues who do that for a living
Hmm.
solely, you know,
Yeah.
it was crazy. But yeah, I just think we need the arts so deeply. We need acting, we need theater, music, live music, especially. I have mixed feelings about streaming and television and film. I mean, there's so much incredible material out there, and then so much that is just I don't think very good for the brain or the emotions. But
I
we need
can't
it, and it.
I can't argue that at all, but it's one of those, you know, I feel like we will, we have the Cardassians, and in history they had, the bread and circus where they fed people to the lions, and I don't, neither are good, but I don't feel like we'll ever get rid of that kind of, it's somewhere between, like, people just like to watch other people suffer for some reason, like in these
Right.
awful reality television shows, and I don't I don't
I
get
guess
it.
it makes us feel like we're not alone. I don't know. I mean, I've heard some people just say, you know what? I get such great joy out of watching reality television. I can actually shut off my brain. I can actually tune out. I can forget about my own shit. And by all means, I mean, we're not living in an easy time right now. And
True.
you got to find your ease and find your joy and whatever that is. It's, we're all different in that way. And, it's important not to judge another's choices,
Try not
I
to, but
suppose.
I mean,
Try.
some of those shows are pretty terrible.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I've never been one for reality. I think just because there's so many incredible films out there, I have a list of hundreds that I don't know if I'll ever get to in my lifetime, but I'm trying.
what's on your list that you want to, like, what's top of your list right now that you haven't seen yet?
Oh man. Well, okay, this is a question that I consistently hate getting asked in interviews because my brain does not
Oh,
have the
sorry.
list
Scratch.
available. So I'm gonna sit here and try and rack my brain and go. Uh, so I'm really excited about Dune 2.
I see. I
I'm
haven't
really
watched
curious.
the first one yet.
Oh, what? You might have missed it because the director Denis Villeneuve said watching Dune 1 on your laptop or television at home would be like trying to drive a steamboat, us trying to drive a like a jet boat in your bathtub. So
Okay.
you kind of miss the opportunity to see it on the big screen, or at least
Yeah.
maybe wait till they're gonna do like
A double
a
feature or something.
rerun
Yeah.
somewhere. Yeah. I mean, you could watch it anywhere, but it's such a um, cinematic phenomenon in every way to watch on a big screen. I'm excited about the second one. I'm really curious about Greta Gerwig's Barbie. Um,
Interesting. Okay.
I haven't watched. I've heard a lot about the first season of Yellow Jackets, which I haven't watched yet.
I've heard a lot about that too, and I haven't watched
Hmm.
any of it, but it's definitely on my radar, and people are raving about it, and I just haven't.
Yeah. Well, I think because I've been so focused on this record right now, I'm kind of out of the of what's coming out indie wise because I'm a really big indie kid. I love indie films, and so I need to take a look. I need to go and watch a bunch of trailers and find out what's on the horizon.
Indie movies are always fun because they're one of those things where I feel like you can see it, but if you're not in the right headspace at the right time, you can watch it like 10 years later and it means so much more, you know,
Yeah, true.
because they're usually they're not the shoot 'em up, bang bang, blow things up movies, which nothing wrong with, but they usually can be way more influential, I think, on your life just because they're
For sure. I remember watching Brokeback Mountain is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I had watched it when it came out. It was like earlier 2000s, I guess, and then I watched it again just a handful of years ago, like 5 years ago or something, and it just crushed me, like just absolutely crushed me. And I just didn't understand heartache and grief in the same way when I had watched it first. And I think that's the beauty about film. It's like you can watch the same movie throughout your life and it just has such different meaning. It really, there's so many universal themes in story in general that that are going to affect us differently depending on where we're at. So
I feel like music's
I
the
love
same
movies for
way,
that.
you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah. Around that same time, I started listening to music in a whole different way. I was just like, oh my God, I understand why people make songs and movies now. Like, I think most of what I had watched in my late teens, early 20s, I was watching it and appreciating it, and I would cry, laugh, whatever, but I just didn't have the same level of life experience that now I can look at some of that stuff and really feel like, oh, I went through that. Or, I
Uh,
watched A Marriage Story um, recently, and it was, well, they redid it with Jessica Chastain and Oscar Isaac and
I like him.
on HBO. And it's just like it was like an acting masterclass, first of all, to watch the two of them work together. Um, but yeah, just watching that, it was just like, oh my God, like I understand this because I've been through so much of this now. It's really wild.
So it's interesting because I was just thinking about how like both music and cinema can affect you emotionally. I feel like music though I use to change my mood more than a movie. Like usually I'm in a mood and I'll watch a movie to match my mood. But like if I'm in a bad mood, I'll use music to kind, I'll listen. One of my go-tos to change, like put myself in a good mood is Jamiroquai because I don't feel like you can listen to
Nice.
Jamiroquai and be unhappy.
Oh
Yeah.
man, 1999. My
Today I would
sisters and
listen to him
I.
today.
No, no, I just
uh,
mean at that. Well, actually, I haven't listened to Jamiroquai in a really long time, but in 1999, I'm pretty sure that that record was on repeat in our house because my sisters and I were obsessed with it. We were traveling in New Zealand and Australia in a van when we were kids. My parents decided to take us out of our small town for a year, and Jamiroquai was definitely one of those albums that was playing on the little boom box that was resting on the floor of the back of the van, along
and
with
you probably
Lauryn
weren't
Hill,
sad at
S Club
all.
7.
S Club 7.
Oh yeah, yeah, S Club 7 all the way.
So do you feel that same way? Do you feel that music can change your mood more than cinema or
Oh yeah. I think I'm the opposite to you. Like if I'm
interesting?
about to go for a run or something, I'm like I have my playlist for that. Or if I'm moving through some grief, I'll like there's a couple songs like from Adrienne Lenker or um like a couple Florence Welch songs that it's almost just like sections that just open up a part of me
Hmm.
that just lets something out. But then with movies, I just find often I get the rug pulled out from under me if I'm not expecting it. Um, I like to go into the mystery with movies, I think. So maybe that's part of it.
Are you a rewatcher? Do you watch like certain movies over and over
Hmm.
again?
You know, no, not a lot. There's a couple that I've seen many times, but no, when I hear people say that, like that they watch a movie like once or twice a month, they're just obsessed with, or people who've watched The Sound of Music like over and over and over again. I'm not, I'm not that person yet, but maybe one day I will be. I don't know.
Yeah, there's like I mean, there's certain things that I'll put on as like background noise, so I'm not sitting in complete silence. And it's either a movie I've seen a bunch of times or some music. But there's certain like if I come across like Breakfast Club flipping through the channels on TV, like that's one of the ones where I just stop and sit and watch what it could be 5 minutes, it could be the whole movie, and it's just one of those. I don't know why it could be like a nostalgic thing because I saw it when I was much younger, but it's
Mhm.
something about that.
I definitely used to watch. Maybe this is just a kid thing, but I watched some films as a kid over and over and over and over
It's
again.
definitely a kid thing because
Yeah,
it's I
I
think
wonder what
every
that
kid does
is.
that.
You think there's
S-
something there?
so someone told me once, and I don't remember who or what their qualifications are, so this could be complete bullshit. But they told me that kids get bored when they don't understand something, and adults get bored when it's repetitive. So I feel like
Mm,
if kids understand like what they're watching, it's almost like a reinforcement of what they know. So they like, I mean,
mm,
there are things from my childhood that I can say word for word back because I've seen it 1,000 times, and
hmm.
it's just kind of like I don't know why it's ingrained in there, but I feel like as an adult I'd never get that because I'd be bored within 5 minutes. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, the psychology of children versus adults. That's actually part of what my record is about, just like going into the idea of childhood creative genius and how it's just so wide open, and that, yeah, we just become sort of at some point in our pre-adolescence, or depending on our environment, I guess, we become really domesticated into these, you know, borders and boxes that we never would have thought before. And maybe that's it too, like watching Aladdin or The Lion King or Merry Melodies over and over again. It's going to be different every time for a kid too, because your mind is like so open to possibility, as opposed to maybe like recognizing the same color patterns, or like,
Mm-hmm.
repetitive audio over and over again. I'm just curious. I don't know a lot about child psychology,
Uh,
um,
I
outside
def
of my own experience,
I was
but
gonna say yeah, other than my kids, I don't pretend to know much. But yeah, I think there's something about creative people where like we've never given up kind of the love of play in whatever that
mm,
happens to be in, where
hmm.
like I'll meet a quote unquote normal adult and they'll be like, oh, what is it you do? And I'll be like, oh, well, I podcast and I do this. And most of them kind of give you a sideways glance, kind of like, come on, man, you know, grow up. But it's, you know, I, I don't want to say I'm happier because like you can't really judge that sort of thing, but my day-to-day life is not a go to an office, punch in, do the same job. I never know what my day is going to be. I never know who I'm going to talk to, and it's to me, it's way more interesting, and it's that kind of playfulness, adventure that I think kids have that I think a lot of people lose as adults.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, in our truest nature, we are creative. Like, creation, the nature is creation. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're going to stay more alive and younger and happier if we are honoring our true nature.
Yeah,
And I mean, you just see it. Like, look at musicians who may have had like the craziest life, drug addiction, you have it, whatever. You hold that 65-year-old up to, someone who's been in a cubicle their whole professional life. Even just, not that, you know, the visual cues tell much of a story, but like, I just think it keeps people young.
yeah,
I've had bandmates who are like nearing their 50s. I'm like, wait, you're how old?
yeah.
I thought you were a couple of years older than me. There's just
Pe-
something about
People are
it,
always amazed when I'll be like, oh yeah, my son just turned 21, and they're like, that can't be, and I'm like, no, it's true. And
Yeah,
yeah, and it is that kind of, I'm excited to go to work. I enjoy talking about what I do because it's different and it's fun, and you know
yeah.
you get to
Well,
tell.
creativity is so expansive and it's so emergent, as opposed to like depressive and insular and sort of dragging, which a lot of those repetitive jobs can do. I think that creativity also, it grows new neural pathways in the brain. I do know a little bit about neuroscience as it pertains to like mood and healing, and like how much we can change, just the idea of neuroplasticity and how much our brains can change just based on bringing in new habit patterns and things like that. And I think that creativity, because so often creativity is not so repetitive, um, that we're constantly building new pathways in the brain, and that's just going to keep someone younger, of course. And
So being a
yeah,
creative person and an actor who has to be able to call on experiences and whatnot, do you find that you put yourself into unusual situations or going new places just to kind of gain that experience? Or
I wouldn't say I intentionally do that, but just because of the path that I've chosen and that I've been so lucky that for pretty much my whole adult life, I've been able to design my days. Every day is pretty much different. That it's been life just ends up being so spontaneous, and um I've traveled a lot, I guess also with my film career. I used to be a camera operator and editor, and I traveled a lot for that. And I don't know, I just find myself on the move a lot naturally, and that definitely informs my acting and my music, and just going deeper into self-inquiry over the years, into my childhood and some things that were really challenging, and the just in a state of reflection in my life of looking back on my path and where things might have gone awry and how I can kind of shift the direction now. That contemplation and that reflection has so much inspired and informed the music that I've been writing in the past few years.
that's interesting. And it's funny because like I used to think that I attracted weirdos because I always just seem to end up in conversations with just the weirdest people. And then I realized it's just part of my nature is kind of at least be open to that kind of, whatever experience the day is going to take you. And so, you know, that person, the weird homeless guy on the street is going to be like, hey, most people would walk by and I'd be like, hey, man, what's going on? And then next thing you know,
Mm,
I'm in a conversation and he's telling me some, crazy nonsense. And my friends are like, let's go. What are you doing? That kind of,
mm.
but it's, you just never, you never know who you're going to meet. You never know where you're going to end up. And I think that's the fun of it.
Yeah, I really appreciate living a life that sort of is guided by its own emergence in a way. And I think not everyone's wired that way. Some people really thrive on structure and a little bit of foresight into what's going to happen. And I'm starting to understand that some stability and consistency in my life would be
Yeah.
nice. um, especially like the last few years with COVID and now the Writers Guild strike. It's just, man, this is
Oh,
just
that's right.
not, yeah, there's
Yeah.
just a lot going on. I definitely haven't chosen the path that's like a sure shot thing by any stretch. So, but I just understand. I have had jobs, I worked in restaurants when I was young, and I've been on other people's schedules and stuff like that, and it's just not how I best show up in the world. So I've just had to honor that and live with all of the challenges and wild cards that it comes with.
So Child of Venus comes out in July 7th. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Are you looking to tour to promote
I'd love
the
to
album?
play shows. I'd love to play shows. I haven't played Amara on stage since 2019. Um, so yeah, I'm trying to call in a band from
Yeah,
the ether.
from the ether.
Where's my band? If you're listening now and you want to be in my band, call me. um, yeah, I'd love to play. I'd love to play this record, and I'm thinking about that quite a bit. So I don't have an infrastructure around touring with this project, um, but I just trust that it'll kind of come in into form for sure.
Kind of in that weird, universal. It'll just come together kind of thing. Yeah,
Oh yeah, for sure. I
those are
mean,
those are the things that happen the best. I've tried so hard to plan so many things, but the best ones are always the ones that just kind of happen organically.
no, I mean, honestly, the last few years for me, and I know it can sound frou-frou, but for me, it's like the law of nature is like if you put something out into the world and obviously you have to do the work and some groundwork and be prepared for the outcome. But I could give you so many examples, like the biggest moments where things have moved for me have been based on setting those intentions or based on like writing that down and watching it come in. I mean, even just a small example of I needed a radio PR team for this album, and
Mm-hmm.
the person who had been really in touch with me during my first album, he really, really wanted to do it. And I looked him up online to see if he was still at it. And it turned out he had passed away in a car accident
Ugh.
months prior, which was really sad. Um, and a very strange moment before you're about to email someone and then you realize that they're not around anymore. Um, Really amazing human, Bobby Gale, who's really well known in the Canadian music world. But I was like, okay, wow, that's not going to happen. And then the very next day, I was texting with a friend who's a musician friend. He said, hey, I've been working with this radio promo company. I don't know, they've been really great for my album. I'd be happy to introduce you if you like. I didn't say anything, just brought it
Yeah.
up to me. And this person I had never actually chatted with personally before. So just things like that, it's all around. I think we're talking about the quantum field aspect of things. Like all possibilities do exist, and it's about moving yourself towards them and trusting that they're moving towards you as well. And
And
yeah,
I feel that
I
it has like
shamelessly believe that.
and I feel like that has a very snowball aspect to it too, where
Oh yeah,
if you're open and you take that kind of first step, like just the world pushes you forward 3, and then you take 3 steps and it pushes you forward 6, and it just like this year has very much been that way for us, where it's just like things are coming at us so fast that I'm worried about dropping things, but at the same time you have to be like, I am going to drop things. It's going to happen, just
yeah.
trying
No,
to.
that's great.
So, but
Sometimes you
where
gotta jump off the cliff, and there's always a landing. Sometimes you just have to trust, even if you can't see it.
Oh,
That
I mean,
something's
yeah,
there
it
to
might be
catch you.
rocks
Yeah,
and a solid ground, but you'll land.
yeah, you'll land.
Yeah. Where can our listeners go to get the album when it comes out?
So the album's up on pre-sale on Bandcamp, which is amaraofficial.bandcamp.com. And then on July 7th, it'll be up on every streaming platform. So whether you're a Spotify, iMusic, Tidal, Deezer, iTunes, it's all there. So it's Amara,
Napster,
Amaara. Napster, LimeWire, my page, my page,
MySpace.
MySpace.
Well,
Just dated myself.
Kaelen, I want to say thank you for taking the time to talk to us. We wish you the best of luck with the album. And anytime you have something to promote, either movie or music or whatever the next venture is, like, feel free, man. Hit us up. This was great.
Cool. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me.
No problem. We'll catch you
Okay.
next time. And listeners, we'll see you guys again next week.
And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at inebriart.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at inebriart.com. So thanks again for listening.